Um, Thank you all for being here. We're very excited to have this series of webinars, especially this one from Andrew on floor time coaching. I know I have a lot to learn today, so I'm really looking forward to it. And we're also very excited to be putting these resources together for parents and caregivers of Emerge, future and current, to be able to see some of the specialty programming that we offer and learn from the experts themselves. I hope some of you are enjoying from home in your pajamas. That's exactly how we want you to learn. And we will also be giving away free lunch at the end. So stay tuned. So today is going to be a webinar, kind of a conversation, I think easy breezy with Andrew because he's easy to talk to and learn from.
Thanks,
Um,
Alex.
yeah. So we're going to be talking about floor time coaching, which is a service that we offer at Emerge. But before we do that, I just wanted to share really quickly. We have had some great community partners jump in and help make these possible. So these are all local businesses owned by local people who are raising families in this area, and we're so proud to be partnered with them. So first up is Goldfish Swim School. If you don't know about Goldfish, I hope when you're done here, you will Google. They have locations in Carborough and Cary, and they are an indoor swim lesson facility that is open 24/7, not 24/7, sorry, 12 months a year. You don't want to go in the middle of the night, but you do want to go in the winter. Um, and it is a place for kids to take swimming lessons, learn about safety. It's also really fun, but it's a safety focused environment. It's great for kids and their families. We have also partnered with Home and Family Dental Care. They are someone that we actually work with a lot. They send us a lot of information. We learn a lot from them. They learn a lot from us. And we even have a few families that I think we both work with. But Shayna Holman is the dentist and owner of Home and Dental Care, Home and Family Dental. And she's wonderful, very active in the community. And was another person that helped make this possible. Next up is Robbie Norris. If you have not heard of Robbie Norris, he has been a Farm Bureau agent in the Chapel Hill area for at least a decade and a half, maybe 2 decades. He is a wonderful person, raising a family here, extremely active in the community, always supporting initiatives like this. And when I talked to him about it, he could not have been more enthusiastic to help us make this possible and get this information to more families. And the last community partner is Chapel Hill Media Group. So 97.9 The Hill WCHL is their FM frequency. And then they also are the brains and the reporters behind chapelboro.com, which is the Chapel Hill area's only source for daily local news. So they are imperative to this community. They have helped us get the word out about these webinars, and we are just super grateful that they jumped on board too. So very lucky to have this roster of sponsors. Andrew, who better to tell us about Andrew than Andrew?
Andrew can tell you about Andrew. Yeah. I am happy to do so. So yeah, a little background information about me. I've been practicing as an occupational therapist for going on 15 years now. I'm an expert training leader in DIR floor time. This certification is through ICDL, which is the largest body in the floor time world. They do trainings worldwide, and it's a wonderful organization. I'll probably bring them up another time or two during our conversation today. I'm also a certified trauma professional. On the personal side, I am a parent of two wonderful, energetic daughters, and I'm also married to an amazing OT who I met in graduate school. I have experience in schools and outpatient settings. And here at Emerge, in addition to being a practicing occupational therapist, I have a specialized role that includes providing reflective supervision to my colleagues. And I've been collaborating on some research with a colleague of mine, Dr. Kavitha Krishnan, on looking at the relationship between therapeutic use of self and reflective supervision. So we're hoping to get published this year, which would be pretty exciting. So people can stay tuned on that.
It's so funny. I said I had a lot to learn, and I'm already learning. I did not know you were married to a fellow OT. So
Yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
cool.
It's
Uh,
been it was as a male occupational therapist, when you go into a program, you're kind of swimming in a sea of women, and I happened to be lucky enough to meet one that was a wonderful fit, and we've been happy here together for many years now.
Wonderful. Wonderful. You're both very lucky. And your objectives for today?
So, sorry, you caught me mid coffee sip. So, we have three main objectives. We are going to learn about floor time and how it supports families. We're going to discuss floor time coaching in particular and reflective practice, which is going to be something that ties together with floor time coaching. And then my last objective was to help families feel better prepared to use a relationship strengths-based approach with their kids.
Cool. I think we can accomplish all that. So I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen. Andrew and I chatted and connected, and he did some like reflective coaching with me, and we realized that this opportunity would be best presented kind of just as a conversation, since I have a lot to learn. Who better than me to ask all my questions? So we're going to not rely on the screen for now. So it's almost going to turn into like a podcast with a video feature. But let's just jump right into it. So to get us started, please explain what floor time actually is, and like how it's coachable.
Yeah, that's a good starting point for us. So I'm going to try to do a very abbreviated summary of the floor time model. And I will say that for families or therapists that are interested, there's a wonderful course series through ICDL. So it's a great starting point if you want to dive deeper. Lots of parents decide to pursue their own like education in floor time, and they're a big part of the floor time community. So the floor time model is also known as DIR floor time. So the DIR stands for developmental individual difference relationship based model. So those are the three main components of floor time. We have the developmental piece, the individual difference, and the relationship component. And so I want to start with the individual difference piece, because the wonderful thing about the floor time world is it ties together so many different professionals in looking at what's happening with the children in our lives. So individual differences really think about what makes each child unique. So it ties together a wonderful community of occupational therapists, speech therapists, physical therapists, educators, people in the mental health world, and of course parents, all together in learning and exploring what makes each child unique. So that's the first thing that's great about the model, is I've been able to be immersed in the role of so many different professionals learning about this model. The other piece that's really at the core of this is the developmental lens. So a lot of the approaches out there that support kids are more behavioral, and floor time is pretty special in that it looks at childhood development. And what also makes it really special is that it ties together the person that is working with the child in the big picture of what we are looking at to facilitate change. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this through a visual in a minute. We will have one thing to share and look at together. But I want to talk about the relationship piece, because that's the third part. And the relationship is a huge component of the floor time model. We, like I said a moment ago, are never looking at the child in a vacuum. We are looking at what is happening between the relationship between the child and teacher or parent or therapist, because we believe in this model that we cannot support childhood growth and development if we are not working within the framework of a relationship. So it is very much a relationship-based approach. So that is what floor time is in a nutshell. I want to share a beautiful visual that I think helps paint the picture of why floor time is such a great model. So a lot of times when we're thinking about supporting children in development, we're thinking about all the skills we want to see as outcomes, right? We think about how we want our kids to be really wonderful students, how we want them to be successful in the classroom, how we want them to be, strong at performing skills, be well organized, get things done. There are a myriad of skills, right, that we want to see as an outcome. And most of our society and institutions are really built towards going straight for those things and thinking about how we can get those outcomes done most directly, right? And that's why most of our approaches are more behavioral. We're trying to think like, well, we want to see this, so what can we do to reinforce this to make these skills happen? And the floor time model believes, let's take a step back, right? We can't just create wonderful, successful students through programming and control. We need to really think about what's happening inside the child. So this metaphor is the learning tree. There's a book written by Dr. Stanley Greenspan, who created the floor time model. And this visual was created by the Greenspan Floor Time Institute, which is run by his son, Jake Greenspan. Um, and it really kind of helps paint a clear picture of this. It looks at all the things happening under the surface, right? The metaphor for the child is this tree. And all the things we can't even see that go into the child, those are those individual differences, right? So those are all the things that are happening that we are not really able to see, but we as professionals have powerful skills to look at and really glean more insight into. And then this trunk of the tree is that developmental hierarchy. We talk about the developmental piece of the model. So all these things are developmental skills, social developmental skills. We call them the functional emotional developmental capacities. And we look at shared attention and regulation, the ability to engage, the ability to communicate, and all those developmental individual differences have things we could dive deeper onto and could not even scrape the surface of in a brief webinar. But as we kind of meet a child where they are at in this developmental hierarchy, we start to build more and more stronger capacities until finally we start to see all these wonderful fruits of our labor, right? So this visual I love because it really paints this developmental model picture of why we start from the bottom up instead of just trying to go straight for targeting those skills. Um,
And I feel like this is so helpful because what it made me realize when you showed it to me recently is that I think people have a real clear uh goal of like what they want the result to be. But what's really difficult to identify is the how. Like this illustrates the how of what you want to get to in these bigger picture ways. Like it's very easy to say I want my child to have better self-esteem. Like okay, let's work backwards down to the roots and see how we make that happen. So I love that this puts it that way to really illustrate the path that this puts you on.
yeah, and it's exactly, and it's if all we have is those goals and outcomes, and we can't take that step back to look more developmentally,
Mhm.
all we're left with is sort of incentivization systems, right? Like reward, punishment, setting up things that kind of try to push people in a direction that we want them to go in. And sometimes that's effective, but if we really want to generate change and create powerful self-actualized kiddos that really know their own needs and know what makes them tick, this is the way to go. It makes a huge
Mhm.
difference.
Yeah. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
Um, can you tell us what makes this sort of parent coaching, viewing it through this lens and this framework, really different or unique?
Yeah. So I'm gonna address that question. And I want to incorporate one more piece into our conversation. Um, so the only thing with the model we haven't talked about yet is the power of affect. Affect is not something we discuss enough as a society and as a huge component of the floor time model. And I want to talk about this before we talk about the coaching, because it is part of what makes coaching in the floor time model a little different than other forms of coaching. So, affect is the way we express our feelings on the inside, on the outside, right? That's the most simple way to look at affect. It is the emotional expression that we wear day to day. And in the floor time model, we really incorporate this as part of the big picture of how we support the relationship and how we support growth. In addition to thinking about things like sensory processing differences and linguistic differences and all the other individual differences, affect ties it all together across the disciplines. My favorite metaphor for affect is like a picture of a conductor in an orchestra. The affect is really what ties things together, all the different ways we use our voice, our gestures, our sound, the pauses between the things we say, all of that is affective. So there is a huge affective piece with the way we connect to the kids we work with. So when we are talking about coaching in the floor time model, we are talking about incorporating some of the other things that we would have in other forms of coaching. We also have Jessica Presnell doing some wonderful sensory-based coaching, which I think some families might benefit from some of that coaching and some of the floor time coaching we're doing. They don't have to be one or the other. But I think that we could do a deep dive on sensory processing and all the things that go into the sensory processing needs of our kids and the families we work with alone. But floor time is going to take together some of those individual differences and also think about what's happening in the moment in the relationship between the child and the parent or the therapist and the parent, and think about the affective connection, think about the things we can do to support that relationship in its growth. So that's a lot to kind of think about, and it's kind of broad as a starting point. But I want to say that the ticket for this is what we call reflective practice, the ability to kind of take a step back and look at the big picture and be curious about what's happening. Now, some people are good at doing this on their own, but most humans, and especially people that are in challenging seasons in their lives, and most parents in the best of circumstances are in a pretty challenging season of their life, have
Yeah.
a hard time getting the big picture. So really just seeing the big picture, right, is a really hard thing to take that step back and be curious and really kind of see what's going
Yeah.
on in the scenes. So the coaching piece really helps to really look at that, to gain that lens, to think about what's really happening here in this moment. We can coach through talking about the child. We can also coach in the moment, watching a play interaction between a parent and child. And we can also coach through watching video of an interaction between parents and children. And again, we do this for our therapists here at Emerge, which is absolutely wonderful. But I think it's something parents should have access to as well. So that is a huge component. And most of this just happens through play. Play is how kids learn. So we are going to do all of this through the play relationship.
Hmm. Yeah. Can you give me an example of I have often found myself using the phrase lead with curiosity. I think it makes us um, a little bit more empathetic to other people. I think it opens up space for wanting to discover why something is happening and not necessarily just being frustrated that it's happening or want it to stop happening. So, can you give an example of maybe a way to shift your immediate reaction to lead with curiosity rather than lead with maybe some of the other like emotional reactions that we can have to these things?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to talk about that. It's a big question, and it's easier said than done, I will say,
Yeah.
because once again, if we are in a place where things are challenging, there are many, many obstacles to reflective thought. It's a very high level capacity. If we are talking about those developmental skills we were talking about, reflection is one of the highest. It is the ability to really not only see what's happening within ourselves, but also around us. Think about the two things together and then kind of pivot to like, what do we want to try, right? It's a lot that it goes into it. But I will say that one of the most important things is the ability to kind of look at what's happening without judgment. I think that is one of the most powerful things to support curiosity because it
Yeah.
is extremely easy to get into a place of feeling a certain feeling or seeing a certain thing happening around us and then feeling either judgmental of ourselves or feeling judgmental of the people around us. And if we are able to take a step back and be curious, we have the power to really change that and change how we're looking at things. We might still feel some strong feelings, right? There might be things like anger or frustration, but if we're able to be curious, we're able to look at those with a different lens.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so we've got a little bit of time left. We do want to open up some questions at the end. If you have a question, I think you should be able to use the hand raise feature. So feel free to use that whenever. But I do have one more question for you, Andrew. Um, do you have any helpful advice or tips that could support families who are here today to maybe begin to implement uh, not necessarily floor time coaching in their home, but things that fall under the umbrella that might lead to like successful floor time opportunities? So,
Well, yeah.
something that maybe like we just said, leading with curiosity. Can you give another example or something actionable that maybe people can try and implement on their own?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. The first one is curiosity, right? And that was something I had in mind if we were talking about, tips to support this emerging practice at home. That's a good one. I will also say that we talked about this a little bit, but play is really essential to all learning. And that means that if we can take a step back from instructor mode and really just enter in the activity with a child, that is also a huge difference maker, right? So instead of trying to teach something like, colors and shapes, if we're doing an activity, really just kind of taking a look at something with a kid and being like, oh, what is that? Instead of the lens of like, I am here to tell you what that is. So that is not, I'm not saying there's not a time for teaching also, but if we are trying to enter this place of, curiosity and this floor time lens where we want to really join with the child and play with the child and think about this relationship component with the child, we want to really think about how to make things playful. So that's another piece I would say. I can give a couple more tidbits if we have time. Do we want to do a
Please
few?
do. Please
Yeah,
do.
I would say that another key component within the floor time model, and this one's hard. This is one that might be contextual. And again, if you want to learn more of this, floor time coaching or taking some of those wonderful courses that I talked about are really the way to go. But thinking about how to make yourself the toy, right? That's another big one in floor time. So a lot of our kids have found comfort in playing with specific items, right? If we're talking about autistic children, the it is very common that we see maybe perseverative play with particular objects and really fixating on those things. And one of the reasons for that is there's a lot of comfort in the predictability and familiarity of those things. And that the world outside the social world can be very unpredictable and can often be full of demands that are not really things that are fun or playful for the child. So if we can think about ways to make ourselves playful and make ourselves even like a basic cause and effect toy, and a few examples of this might be things like, a child pushes a button on a toy and we make a sound effect, right? And we make that sound effect very predictably and consistently so they can see that like they're getting a cause and effect play with us and not just that toy. They can make us something that's playful.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways to do it. But if we can be the toy instead of thinking about those objects being central to play, we can start to build a more robust, playful relationship with the kids we work with. Trying to think if I should do one more tidbit. I'm trying to think here.
What
Um,
yeah, go ahead and do it, and then I'm gonna put the ask out again. If anyone has questions and they want to use the hand raise feature, I apologize to people who are watching this after, and not live, because the Q&A, you'll have to email Andrew, for your own Q&A. But if you are here today and you have any questions, we would love for you to raise your hand. Take some time to think about it while Andrew gives us one more tidbit.
Yeah, and I would love to, hear from families that aren't able to be here today. If people have questions or thoughts, that's perfectly fine to reach out to us at our clinic. So, I would say when we're talking about the power of affect, right? We have a lot we can consider within the affective realm, but really thinking about just the way we want to support individual differences in terms of sensory processing. A lot of what we're going to talk about in the sensory processing world is with, what kind of things feel like just right for a child in terms of touch and sound. But we can do a lot with our voice as well. Some kids might respond to really big affective energy, like high energy affect and play and gestures. And some might need things a little bit more low key. And some might change from moment to moment. I find this in my own house with my kids that like, what works great with like high energy play, I have to shift gears near bedtime, right? Because we can't give that same sort of really intense high affective play right before kids are going to bed. So just thinking about how the way we use our own tone of voice, the way we intonate, the way we kind of pace ourselves, all those things make a big difference. All of these things are great things that we could scratch the surface of here today in tips and trips, but the practicing of those things is hard, which is why coaching is so valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that is a great way to wrap it up. I have not seen any hands go up, so I think we're in the clear there. But I do want to um, bring some info back your way, friends. So if you are interested in pursuing this program, at Emerge with Andrew, we have the QR code here. It's going to take you to our initial inquiry form. You will just select floor time coaching as your area of interest, and you'll get connected with me directly. And we'll chat and we'll get you with Andrew because he's the expert, not me. I'm just really good at scheduling things. And you guys will have the opportunity to talk about those goals and talk about that how and walk down that path together. And you'll be in very, very good hands. So I'm going to leave that up for just another second or two. It's also just on our website under initial inquiry form. We just wanted to make it easy for you. And then I did just want to mention, Andrew, you gave a great plug for next week's webinar. I don't know if you guys know, we are doing these every Thursday until Thanksgiving. We have so many great specialty programming opportunities that emerge for families. And to Andrew's point, a lot of them work really beautifully together. So there's always more power and more knowledge. So uh, I encourage you to attend as many of these as you would like to see how they work together, how they work individually, how we really empower our experts to um, make these programs really special and really impactful. So next week we have sensory-based consulting with Jessica. I'm very excited about that one for my own selfish reasons. The following week, which is Halloween, we are encouraging costumes. We will definitely be in them. We are going to have our owner and executive director, Brittany Winslow, talk about her new program, Taskmasters, followed by feeding therapy with Gwen. Gwen is the therapist at our Carborough location, and she runs a really great feeding therapy program. She's a great person to learn from. And then Laura is going to back clean up for us on the webinars with the last 2 weeks. She's going to talk about our Emerge clubs, which are super fun, especially if you can be in the clinic when they're happening. They are essentially our groups. They're organized by like-minded interests. So we have one for Minecraft. I'm pushing for a Taylor Swift one, but Laura keeps not answering that email. And then our last one will be reading therapy, and Laura's going to lead that one as well. Very excited about all these opportunities. So again, QR code takes you straight to the webinar registration. You'll be able to sign up for Zoom, and you'll get reminders. I apologize if you signed up last week. I didn't click the reminder feature. I'm still learning, guys. And then finally, if you have questions and you want to get connected with Andrew, he has kindly shared his email with all of us. Andrew at emergepeds.com. I'm Allie at emergepeds.com, ALI. And then we wanted to include Brittany as well. We are led at Emerge by a really wonderful, thoughtful uh, occupational therapist named Brittany. She's our executive director and practice owner, and she is very involved in all aspects of the business, and we're very grateful for her. So, if you have any interest in reaching out to her directly, she loves hearing from people, and I'm sure would love to hear from you. I think that's all we've got for today. Let me see if any hands went up. I don't think they did. So I'm going to go ahead and end us early, if that's okay. Andrew, thank you, thank you, thank you for your time and expertise. You're a wonderful person to learn from. And I'm so glad, too, that you are our leader when it comes to reflection and collaborating. And even just for this webinar, I've really enjoyed connecting with you and appreciate your expertise.
Oh, it's been my pleasure to be here today and chat with you.
Thank you so much to everyone who came. And I did want to share that I think it's Asma. You have won our free lunch today, so I will send you an email. And the winner from last week is in here too, and I have not emailed you your free lunch yet. That is on me. I'm very sorry. I will do them both today. We're very grateful that you guys are here and for sharing your time with us. And yeah, I hope you guys learned something today. I hope to hear from you, and I hope that you find fun and exciting ways to be a little bit more curious today. So thank you so much, Andrew.
My pleasure. You have a good rest of your day, Allie.
Bye, friends.